time there. Let me see. We should be recording. And we are recording. And then Jean, you're I think on mute.
I am back.
There you go. Okay, great.
I just also wanted to thank the San Jose State School of Information for helping put on this conference, and the California Libraries Learn. And thank you, Kathleen, for helping out with this session. So just give me 1 second and I'll get started. Hi, I'm Gene Homicki, the co-founder and CEO of MyTurn.com, a public benefit corporation where we offer a software platform that helps organizations increase the reuse of products while radically reducing consumption and waste. To address pressing issues like climate change and inequity, we need to look at cross-sector solutions that can help solve systemic problems and improve community resilience. One such solution, a Library of Things, is an innovative sharing and reuse program being offered by organizations in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And they can help us reach the following 5 goals simultaneously. 1, provide affordable access to products. 2, reduce consumption of those very same products to help reach zero waste goals. 3, fight climate change by reducing the CO2 emissions tied to consumption. 4, help prepare for and build back better after disasters. And 5, improve community cohesion and resilience. What is a Library of Things? A Library of Things is a place-based sharing and reuse program where people can access, without having to purchase, items like power tools, sporting goods, small kitchen appliances, clothing, or just about any product. And when they're done, they can return the items without the hassle of maintaining, repairing, or storing the items themselves. Typically, the products are owned or at least managed by a trusted organization, like a public library, that has a convenient location where people can pick up and drop off items when they're done with them. Some are starting to provide delivery services, and others even use electronic locks and lockers to allow self-service access to expand their hours and make them even more convenient. Library of Things often spin out related services like repair cafes, makerspaces, skill sharing groups, and other community building and waste reduction programs. Libraries of Things use a number of different business models. Often they're membership or subscription based, where you pay a monthly or a yearly fee to access products, and some also have per item usage fees. And of course, many are offered by public libraries or municipalities where access to products is often free, essentially creating product as a public utility. What is the history of Libraries of Things? Well, most, if not all, cultures have a history of sharing items informally. And here in the United States, framed paintings were offered for checkout at the Newark Public Library as far back as 1904. The modern Libraries of Things movement can be more directly traced to tool libraries, which primarily offer hand and power tools. What's believed to be the first formal tool library has been in operation in the United States since 1943 at the Grosse Pointe, Michigan Public Library. By the 1970s, there were at least a dozen tool libraries, but many closed down due to a combination of difficulty operating without technology solutions to help manage them, the rise of consumer culture, and the availability of cheaper products using global supply chains, often made in places without strong environmental or labor protections. The need for access to and the joy of working with durable, high-quality tools and other products didn't go away, but seemed to be forgotten for a while. By the mid-2000s, only a few of the original tool libraries were still in operation, but they would help inspire a new generation of more general libraries of things, which today are rapidly expanding around the world. In 2008-2009, 2 things combined to accelerate this growth. First, the global financial crisis put millions of people out of work, so they often could not afford to maintain their homes or start new businesses. Second, the reduction in cost of cloud-based software development and growing prevalence of mobile computing led to platforms like MyTurn that helped remove one of the major barriers to starting and managing a library of things. Not only could loans be easily tracked, but these platforms add the ability to allow items to be reserved for specific dates in advance that they're needed for projects or events, and can also track required maintenance and provide useful reports and analytics. With so many people under or unemployed during the financial crisis, a shift to affordable access over having to buy everything yourself started to make sense to more and more people. Even as the economy strengthened, for many people, the growth and excitement around libraries of things was still growing. Today, the economic shock of the COVID-19 pandemic and the growing number of climate change-fueled natural disasters further underscore the need for affordable access to tools and items, especially those that can support economic development and rebuilding efforts. We're seeing an increasing number of entrepreneurs, nonprofits, and of course public libraries using MyTurn to start and expand libraries of things. So where are libraries of things and what are they lending? While libraries of things started in the United States, there are now hundreds in at least 15 different countries across the Americas, Europe, and Oceania, and more are starting up every day. The products offered often range from the lowest tech, like gardening tools and baby carriers, to the highest tech, like VR headsets and drones. How do libraries of things build resilience? In addition to making access to products more affordable, libraries of things build community and can help improve resilience by helping to mitigate climate change through reduction in greenhouse gas emissions tied to the production and distribution of durable goods, providing tools and other equipment for disaster preparation and response, and creating jobs and reducing inequity, which will be keys to building back better after the pandemic. How can libraries of things help fight climate change? Only recently has formal research shown how large a role consumption plays in climate change when properly taking into account resource extraction, manufacturing, global supply chains, transportation of goods, storage, actual use of the items, and the disposal or hopefully remanufacturing of products. Research released by the C40 cities shows that when cities look at their greenhouse gas inventories from a consumption-based accounting perspective, rather than just how energy is generated and used locally, they are 60% higher than previously calculated. And those consumption-based emissions from fewer than 100 of the world's biggest cities already represent 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Reuse can play a huge role in reducing climate pollution. In fact, a UN resource panel report found that value retention processes, especially reuse, can reduce consumption-based emissions by up to 99%. We've found that at libraries of things, durable products are often reused 10 to 100 times compared to individual ownership, and therefore help reduce consumption and the related climate pollution. How can a library of things help reduce inequity? The first and most obvious way a library of things can help reduce inequity is by providing affordable access to products to people who might not otherwise be able to afford them. We're seeing this happen around the world, where people who can't afford to purchase items are gaining access to them inexpensively, on a membership basis, or for free when offered by public libraries. In fact, from our customers that collect demographic data, we know that up to 60% of the borrowers are from low-income households in many locations. While access to products is not the same thing as being able to purchase those items, it can be even better due to not having the burden of having to store, maintain, and repair the items. Convenient access to products when and where they are needed is key. Jobs and local value creation are also key concerns, especially in light of the pandemic. Libraries of things and similar sharing and subscription models are most effective when items can be reused as much as possible. This means an increase in maintenance and repair. A recent report that an independent research organization in Norway, SINTEF, carried out with the International Labour Organization found that moving to a circular economy, where products and resources are completely reused, remanufactured, or recycled, could actually lead to more than 75 million new jobs worldwide. And providing people access to products like sewing machines, small kitchen appliances, and tools can help people learn new skills or help those with skills who have lost their job to get back on their feet or even start new businesses. How can libraries of things help communities prepare for and build back better after disasters? To be most effective, libraries of things should already be in place before disasters like superstorms, floods, wildfires, or earthquakes happen. The tools, equipment, skills, and community that often grow up around a library of things creates the essential ingredients for rapid response and rebuilding. After a disaster, it can take days, weeks, or even much longer in rural communities for effective outside assistance to arrive. The better communities are equipped to help themselves and other communities in their region, the better they will do after a disaster. We've seen libraries of things start in places like Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, and Australia after the wildfires earlier this year. And over the past few weeks, I've been providing assistance to help get a larger network of new tool libraries started on the west coast of the United States to help people rebuild after the wildfires here. So what if a library of things itself is damaged in a disaster? This is where redundant and reliable platforms like MyTurn can help locate the needed items at other locations in regional networks. And even before a disaster happens, libraries of things can play a number of roles in disaster preparation. Some of the most popular items, like power drills, nailers, air compressors, and reciprocating saws, are often borrowed to be used for earthquake retrofits. And the Oakland, California Tool Library even offers an earthquake retrofit kit. Over the past decade, there's been growing recognition that public libraries can play a critical role in emergency response by leveraging their expertise in information dissemination, providing a comforting place for disaster victims, and also providing multi-purpose spaces for disaster preparation and response. Adding or growing a library of things is a great way to help increase access to the tools and resources needed for communities to build back better and faster after a disaster. So I'd also like to add to that libraries of things are great for community resilience in general. I started a tool library, which was actually more of a more general library of things, as we had a pretty liberal definition of what a tool was when I lived in Seattle. And just the amazing community that built up around it. We'd actually started it to essentially help people during the financial crisis gain affordable access to tools. And I was on the board of a sustainability nonprofit at the time, so we had the dual purpose of reducing consumption. But really what happened is it was just a great way to build community, as public libraries know, and as public libraries really do in their communities as well. I'd love seeing especially at public libraries, having libraries of things added, is it really just makes it even more of a sharing hub than it is. Always have thought of public libraries as the original sort of sharing economy platform. And I personally would love to see it grow more. I'd also love to open things up to the chat if you have questions. Otherwise, I can also go through a couple of things on issues with starting libraries of things, and I think we might see a couple of questions coming in.
So Jean, just let me go ahead and unmute everybody. Okay, I think we're good. So I think everyone now, if you'd like to talk to Jean, you can go ahead and turn on your mic. If you have a question, just let us know in the chat if you'd like to do that. So
Oh, I think you muted yourself, Kathleen.
So anybody who'd like to share?
So I see a couple of comments. I'll actually let me go in order a little bit. Yeah, so someone mentioned that their library of things is currently out of commission due to COVID, since they're only open for curbside pickup and return of materials that can be returned in a book drop. Suggestions. So I know one of the things that we did is basically as soon as COVID hit, because we knew this was going to be an issue, is we did add the ability for having pick up time slots and appointments to limit the number of people that can show up to pick up items and return them. So that can be a way to maintain social distancing, not have gatherings, and also sort of control the flow of people. It still does require someone to be there for doing pickup and drop off. And we're also working with an organization that's doing electronic locks and lockers to allow after hours, before hours, pickups and drop-offs or unattended. Still requires some cleaning. And then some of the libraries of things that I'm working with will also do things like have a enforced quarantine. So after an item comes back, it's not allowed to go out for a certain number of days. It still does sort of require that interaction, but there are definitely ways you can work around that for both books as well as public libraries, for libraries of things, excuse me. I do see a question on how to get started as well. That could be a whole session in and of itself, but I'll talk a little bit. Getting started for a public library is actually easier than, say, an independent group. When I started the West Seattle Tool Library, or co-founded that, we had to find space, items, insurance, basically everything. Typically, public libraries, if they don't already, it can be an added on. Insurance is usually one of the first questions. Often, if they're municipal, they'll be self-insured by the city, or the library of things might be covered just based on value of the items. Space can be, I've seen in a number of public libraries, reduce space, the number of physical books, and it gives a little bit of extra space for basically a special collection, like a library of things. And we've seen, I have talked to a couple of even smaller libraries of things, one that runs a tool library in Safety Harbor, Florida. They actually started with an initial $500 budget, which went towards getting essentially a shed for additional storage. And they take donations of tools and items. And that's something that some organizations don't want to do. They want to have new things so they know exactly where they've come from. However, taking those donations also helps build that sense of community ownership, as the community is essentially donating, participating, and helping build that initial library of things. So it's some of their items, and at least from what we've seen, it also helps with reducing things like loss, theft, et cetera, because the community essentially owns this resource, just like they do at the public library. But even more directly, potentially sometimes by donating items rather than just paying taxes. But again, public libraries have that advantage of staff if you're not already completely overworked. But if you do have some additional staff time, and again, at Safety Harbor, they definitely did. And then their ongoing costs, and they have, I believe, a collection of about 400, just under 400 items. Their ongoing costs are $2,000 to $3,000 a year for maintenance, new tools, additional software platform, things like that to help manage it. But otherwise, it can be pretty similar to lending books. So some of the platforms like ours do allow even things like requesting pickup at your local branch of items that might be spread across multiple branches. But I'm also happy to answer questions after this session if you ever want to reach out, and I can take more specific questions here as well.
I was just going to say, JW asked about because of the pandemic, people aren't taking public transportation. And there was a sign about bikes and other alternative types. How has that worked? Do you think that that can spread?
Yeah, so just had a meeting this morning and a similar one yesterday where we have a couple of library of things that are going to be offering delivery. These are both in Europe and they're going to be doing it via actually bikes or electric bikes. So it's actually that added sustainability. This is in a more urban area where that works. And what they're doing is they're actually partnering with essentially a sustainable delivery service to even get the items out to people and potentially pick them up. There's an added cost there, and then but there are definitely challenges with public transit, and that also might help sort of control what types of items you carry in your library of things, like things that can be more easily carried if you do have a number of people using public transit, especially once public transit is back to full steam.
Sandra had a question about due dates, overdues. How is that handled?
Yeah, so similarly, I can talk about how we do it in our platform, My Turn. So we have automated reminders. We have the ability to have buffer days between loans and reservations. So that way, those are being used really right now, including for quarantining items after they come back, but they can also be used to give you a little bit of a buffer between when an item is supposed to come back and when it actually does, if it's a little bit late. So that tends to help lessen those issues. The reminders before items are due back are actually super helpful, as well as overdue reminders, of course, sort of the carrot and the stick. And and obviously we don't allow double booking, things like that. Having said that, there are definitely, there can be issues with people not returning items on time, but usually people are pretty good, especially if they get that reminder in advance, so that way they can, plan as part of another trip to bring something back. And the one other thing I'll mention that seems to be more critical with so physical products, and that can be tools or can be kitchen items or even games, being able to reserve them in advance tends to be pretty important. Like if you're working on a project, you're having an event, or you have family in town, whether it's, as I said, games or even museum passes, things like that, it does help to be able to reserve them for set days, which is definitely a change for most public libraries that are used to dealing with, holds as opposed to those reservations. So, but we try to make that process as easy as possible.
Z Klein asked, how do you get started? And I suppose, like my question would be, how do you find out what your local community wants?
Absolutely. Communication with the local community is key, including surveys on what they might want or what do they need access to. We have data from customers that share, so can even provide recommendations based on areas with similar demographics. But having that communication and having that conversation with the community, which libraries tend to be great at, already have existing patrons, and doing that communication and actually that outreach to the community is really key. And that also helps let more people know about the new library of things even before it's coming, build up some of that excitement. And then the library of things, I know, for example, in Berkeley, California, they've had one of those tool libraries that have been around since the 1970s. They rebuilt their South Branch a couple of years ago, and they rebuilt the tool library specifically because it also wanted such a great community resource, but it also helps bring in patrons to their main library. So they kind of considered it an essential service when they rebuilt their South Branch where the tool library was housed.
Very nice. Okay, and I know you've addressed COVID. You've talked about liability. Z Klein also asked, what convinces library administration or state council members this is a good use of taxpayer funds? How do you overcome that?
That is always a good question. And some of the things that I've talked about, even with the resilience conversation, and as we heard in the keynotes earlier, all of these things are connected. I started and helped start that tool library back during the previous financial crisis. We started in 2009, 2010. Getting at people access to whether it's tools to help them maintain their homes, home products that they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford, especially right now, seems like a no-brainer. Also then talking if your city is in an area that has zero waste goals, this definitely helps push towards those zero waste goals. There are a number of levers, and then also the additional or incremental cost doesn't have to be that high, especially to just get started. And then you also provide another critical service. And I know libraries these days are often looking for new services, whether that's repair cafes, adding maker spaces. Library of Things is another one of those great ones to, not just stay relevant, but to become even more relevant and more of a community hub.
So Teen Sonic asked, how do you handle tools that require knowledge, experience, or using it safety, power tools, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways. One, sometimes that will require hiring someone to do maintenance or partnering with an organization. One of the great things that we actually did with the tool library that I was a co-founder of is that we had a repair cafe, a regular or fix-it group that met a couple of times a month. And basically, if the community members didn't bring items in to repair, there was an endless supply of items to maintain, fix, or tune up in the tool library right next door. So, but there can definitely be a cost there for either items that are not donated or if you don't have that expertise in-house. On the safety side, it's there are a couple of things you can do there. One, you always want to have you can set up agreements, terms of use, to ensure people have layers of protection. Insurance is you're obviously going to want to have that. You can also do things like embed how-to videos right onto product pages, at least with our platform. So that way you can recommend people go and check out actually how to use those tools safely. And libraries are wonderful at disseminating information and skill sharing, and so then also potentially having tool safety classes is often, very, very often, another key part of tool library specifically, or kitchen type classes for other types of libraries of things.
Okay, you talked about returning items, liability waivers. Let's see, any items to avoid?
The one, if you're going to do power tools, which only some libraries of things will do, will typically be chainsaws. Just we know of tool libraries and libraries of things that do lend them out. They have people that are, the chains need to be checked before they go out, when they come back in, and potentially have some safety classes. So that's probably one of the biggest. And then the other is to try to pick items that are more durable. So especially if you're going to be purchasing, might pay a little bit more, but find the ones that are more durable and more repairable, and avoid the ones that just are going to basically break, or those lower end, less expensive items that just might not last in a shared situation. So I had showed a slide with a couple of the items that we've seen go out literally hundreds of times, but there are other items that just don't hold up to constant use. One of the others is pressure washers, which can be pretty popular as well. But if you get the low end ones, they're not meant to be running constantly. They're literally designed to only run a few hours per year if they're for home use. So you want to sometimes, for certain items, you want to go for professional ones.
And that kind of dovetails into what are some practical items to start circulating if you just are starting out?
Yeah, so one, it does depend on where you are. I think I saw games mentioned, and that actually is a kind of a popular, easy one, and it's pretty similar to books and media. Tools I always find as being really great, and that can be even just small power tools, power drills, things that people don't need very often. I know from my own public library and their special collection or library of things, I borrowed a infrared camera for helping do essentially energy retrofits and energy tests, which again, that sort of doubles the benefit. So you're sharing products to basically, so you're reducing greenhouse emissions due to reduced consumption to you while using a product that is also helping you further reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we have full libraries that are just energy efficiency tools and equipment. So, and I can post a couple of other sort of the most popular items. And it is, it's often tools, but also things like telescopes, which again, people don't typically use all the time, or small kitchen appliances, Instant Pots, bread makers, ice cream makers, the things that you kind of use once or twice a year or once or twice ever are often really good types of items. And I think someone mentioned, yeah, technology items that people might not be able to afford in the community are also great. So hotspots, Chromebooks. So thank you, Maggie, for bringing that up. And someone just mentioned bubble machines. Yes, bubble machines and popcorn makers. So again, these things, yeah, having some fun items in there are also great because they get, get some, a little more publicity and a little more attention.
I just wanted to mention, officially we had ended at 2:30, but if Jean's willing to answer a few more questions, I'll leave the recording going, and then when they send out the links, you can just replay the last part of this if you need to go.
And I'll also just toss up some contact information. Feel free to reach out. Even if you're not using our platform, that's fine. I'm always happy to help get libraries of things, tool libraries, and similar sharing programs started. Basically, I mentioned at the start, we're a public benefit corporation. So we are for profit, but we have written into our founding documents both social and environmental missions, which are basically to increase affordable access to tools and other products while reducing consumption and waste. And so getting libraries of things, tool libraries started and helping out with that, we are always happy to do.
There was a question about, do you think a library of things could aid with learning vocational skills?
Yes, actually, we are working with it's a tool library again, that they also offer classes. And then also provide tools to people that are learning the vocation so they can practice at home. Two, they're doing vocational type classes. And then they're also planning to put together a training program for how to start and run a tool library or library of things. So not necessarily within a public library, but we also see around the world where a nonprofit will partner with, I kind of mentioned in passing during the presentation, with a public library to offer some of those services. And as the keynotes mentioned, those community partnerships, this is all connected and are a great thing to do. So we'd love to see more job creation by enabling people that have skills or learn skills as part of a related skill sharing program that then have access to, say, tools or kitchen items if they're starting a catering type program, and allowing libraries to help with that type of economic development. Again, then also tie that back to, how do you get city administrators or municipal administrators and library boards to help approve funding? If you can show economic development, potentially get grants, et cetera. All of this just ties together.
Right. And so that would, and someone had asked about community organizations aiding with the library. So it sounds like that would definitely help out there. And let me see, lots and lots of messages here. Is there a list of things somewhere? That was from Nancy. And I'm just thinking, do you have some of this information, or is it available somewhere on the web?
Yeah, so our site has some information. If you have, I will make sure, this session is going to be recorded as well. And we are also helping to get I'm just sort of a participant here, a Lending Library Alliance going. that'll basically be that's world with libraries of things, tool libraries, et cetera, worldwide that are putting together lists of things like best practices. This will be not just for public libraries, but public libraries are more than welcome to attend, but also nonprofits, social enterprises getting these things together. And I'll see if we can get a link posted after that's maybe sent out. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to me, and I can send some links to a set of resources on our website as well.
Okay, someone asked, just kind of throwing this out here, community partnerships with smaller independent hardware stores, having hot to workshops, maybe bringing people into the library.
Absolutely. There were some concerns when we started the tool library in Seattle, and about like how are the the true value, the local shops, how are they going to feel about this. They were actually really supportive because often, one, they're making money through consumables, and so whether it's nails, wood, etc., rather than tool sales or rentals, which are usually sort of a smaller part of their business. And then the more people that are doing things in the community, the more people that are, say, they're getting involved with doing some home repairs, or they're starting to do some artisan type work or art projects, the more people that are going to be customers. So they can be great partners, and they usually support these types of things. And so bringing them into the library as well for classes is even better. So you're just really strengthening those community ties between a resource like the public library, a library of things, and small businesses.
So I think we were kind of at the end of the questions. Unless anyone else wants to turn on your mic, or you can throw something into the chat. Lots of people sharing their ideas, their experiences. I'm really, I remember learning about this in library school. So this is, it's just definitely interesting to see the fruition of this and how valuable it can be in a community.
Yeah, it makes it really easy to get up every day, even during 2020, to be doing this work and really interacting with our customers and learning about the amazing things they do. There's a food bank in Bloomington, Indiana, that has shared gardening space, a tool library to help people have the tools so they can garden either in their shared gardening space or at home. They do classes on how to prepare healthy food. They have a kitchen lending library to help them prepare that food. And then so you're basically using shared resources to take people with food insecurity and help them essentially reduce that food insecurity and teach them how to grow and prepare healthy food. It's like dozens of amazing stories like that. This is just such a such a great thing. So.
And Jeff just asked if a transcript of the chat could be shared. I will kind of forward that. I think Jean can as well. We'll forward that and see if they can have that shared with people. And of course, then links to the video should be sent out to you, so you can also look at this again if you'd like.
Great. Okay, and we should, since there is, I think, a closing keynote that we're cutting into, unless there are any critical last questions, I'd say thank you all for attending. Thank you for the great ideas. I will also be checking out the chat transcript. Thank you for all the work that you guys do. Libraries are such an essential community resource. So I have always admired and loved them, and love reading as well. So you guys are all awesome as well.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your conference.
Thanks.